Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to Aussie Fish Keeping. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at 7 species of fish that make the perfect addition into any planted aquarium. So all 7 of these fish are super colorful, super peaceful, and relatively easy to care for. They're also obviously plant friendly, so they're not going to tear up your plants or anything. And yeah, all 7 of these species are just literally the perfect addition into any planted or scaped aquarium. But I guess without any further ado, let's just jump straight into today's video with the first fish on our list. So as for our first fish today, we have a super cool little fish, one of my favorites on this list. We have celestial pearl Danos. So celestial pearl Danos, or CPDs, or galaxy rasboras, are a super cool little fish. I believe they're from Myanmar. They're definitely one of the most sought after nanofish here in Australia in particular. And every time I think of like nanofish, CPDs are the first fish to pop into my mind. They're super iconic, and yeah, they're just one of the coolest little planted aquarium nanofish you can get. So if you don't know what a CPD is, they basically have like these sort of shimmering blue bodies with orange spots and fins. And their pattern obviously does sort of resemble like a galaxy, I guess. That's why they're called galaxy rasboras. So as for the behavior, I guess these guys exhibit, they're super active little swimmers. They're constantly like exploring and swimming around their tank and the tank environment. And they're super great at adding an extra lively dynamic to your aquarium. So particularly if you have a planted aquarium, a lot of the time it's going to be kind of bland and not really fast moving. So adding a few CPDs in there definitely helps liven up the tank a little bit. As for water parameters for these guys, they do like a temperature of around 22 to 26 degrees Celsius, which is around 72 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. And your pH should just be a general 6.5 to 7.5. But when you are keeping these guys, you do want to make sure your water parameters do stay relatively stable, just because they can be very fickle and very like delicate. So you don't want large fluctuations in your water parameters, just because that can stress them out and they can die. So as for tank setting for these guys, obviously they do great in planted aquariums. Not only does it make them feel a lot safer, but it also brings out their colors and they'll start to spar with each other and spawn with each other. So it brings out all sorts of natural behaviors from them as well. Also, I would recommend trying to keep them in a relatively slow flow aquarium, just because they aren't the best swimmers. If you do have flow in there for a short amount of time, they probably will like go and play in that flow a little bit, but I do believe these guys come from pretty slow moving waters in the wild, so they're not going to be very confident or fast moving swimmers. So some sort of soft flow filter like a sponge filter generally works best for them. And then as for tank mates, they have super small mouths and they are super delicate, so you don't want to keep them with anything too nippy. But because they do have that small mouth, they can actually be kept with super small fish. So they can be kept with things like cherry shrimp, endlers, guppies, tetras, rasboras. All sorts of small tropical fish like that go great with the CPDs. But yeah, CPDs are definitely a super great nano planted aquarium fish, and I would highly recommend them. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we actually have another one of my favorites. We have cherry barbs. So I actually do think cherry barbs are super underrated. I think a lot of the time people just get males for their aquarium. And the problem with just getting males is they won't have obviously any females to show off their color to, so they're not going to brighten up to their full potential. Although if you do get a few females with your males, you will find those males color up absolutely amazingly. They turn into literal little red cherries. And not only that, but they're super easy to care for. They're one of the best beginner fish in my opinion. Well, all barbs are technically. And they're super peaceful, so they can go with a variety of other like friendly aquarium fish. And as well, I will quickly mention they're super easy to breed. So these were, I think, probably the second fish I've ever bred. And the super cool thing is, in my experience, when I've bred these guys, their eggs actually are sort of like orangey or reddish. So they're like little cherries again. So yeah, they're just all around a super great fish to have for your aquarium anyway. As for these guys' behavior, again, they're relatively active, a little less active than the CPDs in my opinion. And they sort of they move around a lot, but they don't move around very fast. But they are also a super social fish, so they do best in schools of about 4 to 6. And I'd say if you do get a school of say 4, you'd want at least 1 male for 3 females, although you probably could get away with 2 males and 2 females. And then a group of 6, 3 males and 3 females would be a perfect ratio. I actually have a group of 5. These are just some I kept back from my last batch, and I've got 2 males and 3 females, and I find that's a really great ratio as well. So as for water parameters for these guys, they do like a temperature of around 23 to 27 degrees Celsius, which is around 73 to 81 degrees Fahrenheit. And your temperature should be anywhere between 6 to 7.5. So these guys are a lot less fickle than the CPDs, so they can actually tolerate like small fluctuations, but again, you don't want any massive fluctuations just because that can stress them out a lot. And then as for tank setting, obviously planted aquariums are best for them, and one of the reasons they're actually one of my favorite aquarium fish for a planted aquarium is because when you do keep them with plants, like nice green aquarium plants, that green and that red, I do believe like green and red may actually be complete opposite colors. Don't quote me on that, but the green definitely does make their color pop a lot more, and they're definitely one of the most vibrant aquarium fish you can get for your planted aquarium. But yeah, with that said, I mean, cherry barbs are definitely another super great aquarium fish for your planted aquarium, and I would highly recommend them. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we have another super small little live bearer. We have Endlers. So obviously Endlers are literally pretty much exactly like guppies. Only difference is they're a lot smaller. They generally have different body patterns, and they don't have very long flowing fins like guppies do. And in my opinion, Endlers are a little bit more hardy. The only reason I say that is because they have been a lot less line bred. I mean, there's obviously some lines out there that aren't as hardy as others, but as for just your general like black bar Endlers, I find they're a super solid line of fish, and you don't get too many bent spines or things like that. They're just generally a healthy line of fish. As for water parameters for these guys, they can go in a temperature of around 24 to 28 degrees Celsius, which is around 75 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. And your pH should be anywhere between 6.5 to 8. However, because they are a live bearer, a lot of live bearers, particularly like guppies and mollies and swordtails and things like that, or like that higher pH of around 7.5 to 8. So if you can, I'd highly recommend trying to keep them in a higher pH. But obviously a lot of the other nano planted aquarium fish like the CPDs don't like a pH that high, which is fine. Obviously the Endlers can go in lower pH. But yeah, Endlers are definitely another great, super cool little planted aquarium fish, and I would highly recommend them. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we actually have a cichlid. We have angelfish. So angelfish are by far one of the most majestic freshwater fish out there. They're super cool. They kind of look like an angel. They've got a really triangular body. They've got super nice long fins, and they're by far one of the most attractive aquarium fish you can get. Not only that, but they're actually relatively peaceful, and as long as you have a big enough aquarium, I do find that these guys aren't like aggressive whatsoever, particularly if you're keeping them with fast moving fish like tetras, rasboras, barbs, danios, guppies, things like that. And obviously they can also go with things like cories and other bottom dwelling fish. So the only problem with these guys is sometimes if you like by chance have a pair in your aquarium, they can become pretty territorial, and particularly in a planted aquarium where you may have like an Amazon sword or like some sort of sword plant, they'll usually try and make a territory around that plant just because those leaves are nice and broad and they're an easy surface for them to lay on. But besides that, they are super great with plants. They actually love having plants in their aquarium. So obviously in the wild, these guys come from relatively densely planted areas, and that's actually why in the wild angelfish you will see those like vertical bars, just to help them camouflage in the aquatic plants and in like the roots and sticks and stuff. So as for water parameters for these guys, they do like a temperature of around 24 to 28 degrees Celsius, which is about 72 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. And they like a pH anywhere between 6.8 to 7.8. Although I would prefer keeping them in a more acidic, softer water, just because that's where they sort of come from in the wild. They have a lot softer, more acidic water. One other thing I will mention is you're gonna want a decent sized aquarium for these guys. So I'd say minimum would be about a 2-foot tank. And I'd say you could probably get away with keeping a pair in a 2-foot tank. I've done it a few times and they've bred successfully for me. So they're definitely happy. But yeah, with that being said, angelfish are definitely another great planted aquarium fish, and I would highly recommend them. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we actually don't have a fish, we have a little invertebrate. We have cherry shrimp. So cherry shrimp are by far, again, one of the most iconic nano fish, or like planted aquarium fish out there. They're super easy to care for, super easy to breed, super peaceful, and very compatible with all sorts of aquarium tank types, all sorts of aquarium setups. So obviously cherry shrimp do best in heavily planted aquariums where they can just rummage through the plants, pick up all sorts of leftover food or like biofilms and things like that, and just breed like rabbits. But yeah, obviously they don't have a very big mouth at all, so they're not going to nip at your fish at all or like rip at tails or anything. And they're actually super beneficial to have in your aquarium as well. So not only will they eat any leftover food like I mentioned before, but they'll also go around and eat any sort of surface algae or biofilms growing in your aquarium as well. And they will just rummage through the detritus and kick that up into the water column, which makes it a lot easier for your filter to suck up. But yeah, as for water parameters for these guys, they do like a temperature of around 18 to 26 degrees Celsius, which is about 65 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit, and you should be keeping them in a pH of anywhere between 6.5 to 8. So these are one of the only fish on our list that actually can be kept unheated. Particularly here in Australia, I've kept them outdoors before and they do fine all year round. And this tank behind me, which I keep them in, is also unheated and they have no troubles in there whatsoever. But yeah, cherry shrimp are definitely another super great planted aquarium fish, and I would highly recommend them. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we have a fish I talk about in literally all of my videos. We have zebra denios. So zebra denios are a super hardy, active aquarium fish. I've got some in this tank here behind me. They're super easy to breed, super peaceful, like I said, super hardy, so they're great for beginners and experienced aquarists. It really doesn't matter, they're just a super great fish all around. And obviously the reason they're on this list today is they're actually super compatible with plants as well. So they're not gonna nip at plants or eat plants and things like that. Even though a lot of the time they can be notoriously nippy to other fish, they're not actually gonna be nippy at your plants or anything like that. However, like I say in all of my videos, if you get the long fin variants, they're a lot less nippy just because those longer fins slow them down, so they can be kept with a wider variety of tank mates. So as for water parameters for these guys, they do like a temperature of around 18 to 25 degrees Celsius, which is about 65 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. And you should have a pH of around 6.5 to 7.5. So once again, they can be kept unheated. I keep them unheated all year round here inside my fish room and outdoors. So there is actually two more things I would recommend. Number one being trying to keep them in a school, and the reason for that is because obviously they are a schooling fish. Lots of aquarium fish with like vertical or horizontally striped patterns are schooling fish, just because it makes them a lot harder for predators to pick out an individual fish to go after. So yeah, keeping them in schools of about 3 to 6 is generally best. That's also going to minimize a lot of aggression as well. And the second thing I would recommend is trying not to keep short fin denios and long fin denios together. So the reason for that is because, like I said before, the long fins on the long fin denios slow them down a lot, and the short fin denios are super nippy. So if you mix them together, you may find that your short fin denios just absolutely abuse the living daylights out of your long fin denios. So I would just try and recommend either keeping them in separate tanks or just keeping one or the other. But yeah, with that being said, zebra denios are definitely another great planted aquarium fish. Moving on to the final fish on our list, we've actually got like a whole group of fish. We have dwarf cichlids. So dwarf cichlids obviously represent a diverse group of small, colorful cichlids originating mainly from South America, and a lot of the time they are prized for their unique behaviors and compatibility in planted tanks. So obviously there's a few main dwarf cichlids, so that's things like crebensis, which aren't actually from South America, but crebensis, apistogrammas, ram cichlids, Bolivian butterflies, and even what I have behind me here, some golden eye cichlids. So out of those, my favorite are probably apistogrammas, but since I have gotten these golden eye cichlids, I really have started to fall in love with them. They're super cool little fish, and I've actually gotten these guys from super young, so I've been able to watch them grow and develop their colors, and the males are just super cool little fish. So obviously not all dwarf cichlids are going to be able to go in a planted aquarium. There's some some aggressive ones out there, but for the most part, things like your Apistos, ram cichlids, and your golden eye cichlids are all super plant safe and super great for a planted tank. As for water parameters for most dwarf cichlids, you're going to want a temperature of around 22 to 28 degrees Celsius, which is about 72 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. And most of the time, you're going to want a pH anywhere between 6 to 7.5. And another thing I would recommend is trying to keep your dwarf cichlids in pairs. So they can be super territorial at times, but most of the time they are peaceful. They're not really trying to like go after other fish in your aquarium. They're more so just trying to protect their territory. And keeping them in pairs also makes them feel a lot safer, and obviously makes them show off a lot more, so they'll have much nicer colors. But yeah, with that being said, dwarf cichlids like the apistogrammas and like the German blue ram cichlids are another great group of fish that you can keep in your planted aquarium. So that is actually going to bring us to the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope this video did help some of you guys out there. All 7 of these species are super compatible with plants, and they're just great species to get anyway. They're all super cool and super unique. But yeah, if you did enjoy today's video, make sure to go down and subscribe, and while you're down there, smash the like button and comment your thoughts on today's video. I always love going down there and reading them all, and I'll try to reply back to as many comments as I can. Also, make sure to go check out my website. I'm about to actually launch a few of my apistogrammas, which I've recently bred, so like this guy here. Apistogramma, Cacatoides, Orange Flash. I've got, I think, about 2 pairs that I'll be putting up shortly. And obviously, I've got all sorts of botanicals and other aquarium fish on there as well, so I'll leave that linked in the description. Please go check it out if you can. But yeah, with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all